Hi there, folks. How you guys doing today? I'm doing well. So, anyways, recently I watched a video by a divorce lawyer named James Sexton, and he brought up some decent points. He brought up statistics and a lot of that, but the main thing I took away from his video is that his advice was just kind of bad. So, for instance, he believes that you should get married, you should go through all of the ringers, deal with the divorce and all of that, but you should have a prenuptial agreement, right? Because if you have a prenuptial agreement, everything's going to work out perfectly, right? Well, that's not entirely true, so today I'd like to talk about the issues with his interview in particular and why, he doesn't present good arguments for getting married even with prenuptial agreements. A lot of people are going to come with the just get a prenup brah argument, and in reality, they don't know what they're talking about. Prenuptials get thrown out all the time, and there's a few different reasons that prenuptials get thrown out. And I'm going to cover the two most common ones and why pretty much they're applicable to every single prenuptial agreement, and why, the vast majority of them could be thrown out. If people choose to abide by them, that's great, but they're not required to, and a lot of them don't. So the two main facets of a prenuptial agreement that get it thrown out are going to be: the first is duress. So in legalese speaking, I'm not a lawyer, but, in legalese speaking, duress means that, someone is signing a contract under stress or under, some sort of circumstance, right? And that contract is invalid because they're under duress. You can't point a gun at someone's head and say, sign away all of your money to me and that contract be legally binding, right? That's not how it works. And so how this applies to marriage is that if you tell a woman that you will not get married to her without a prenuptial agreement, that prenuptial agreement automatically is invalid in court because she signed it under duress. She signed it because she wanted to get married with you. So virtually every single prenuptial agreement ever, pretty much, if she says he wouldn't marry me without a prenup, automatically that prenuptial agreement is invalid. Prenuptials started as agreements between people over things like dowries, over things like, endowments and such, over things that aren't between the husband and wife usually. They're not some sort of, catch-all where the husband is supposed to, protect his assets from the wife from them. That's not how it works. That's never what it was used for. It was for, arranged marriages and such. So trying to say this law is going to save you or protect you, in divorce, it's really not if the wife has any clue, and if you tell her you're not going to get married, or he says he wouldn't marry me without, the prenuptial agreement, right? And if you get a prenuptial agreement, it's probably true you wouldn't have married her without it. So, virtually all prenuptial agreements, just based on that alone, are completely invalidated on family court and will easily get thrown out. So, prenuptial agreement, at least in that respect, is not going to save you. You should not get married, period. You should not, be living with someone ever, because even if your state is not a common law marriage state, at some point it could become a common law marriage state. You have no control over that. You have no power in this situation. And people like James Sexton need to figure out some way to try and trick you into thinking, well, you can, enter into marriages, it's going to be fine, So you just have this little, prenuptial agreement between your wife and you that will somehow protect your assets or protect you from becoming a slave to the state. And that's really not what's going to happen, just factually. And the second way prenuptial agreements usually get thrown out is if the wife does not have her own legal representation that reviews the prenuptial agreement, it's also invalid. So you can't just, take a prenuptial agreement you both signed, take it to a notary, and then have that filled in. That's not how it works, at least legally speaking. If your wife has an IQ above room temperature, you're going to need separate legal counsel, and both of those legal counsels need to look at the document and then agree to it. And then she also will need to sign a waiver, basically, that says that she's getting married, and that the prenuptial agreement has nothing to do with the marriage, right? Which, realistically, no one's going to go through that. And it's why so many of these prenuptial agreements get thrown out of court. Maybe there's some legalese way you can, weasel yourself into being protected from all of your assets. Maybe there's some way you can go about this realistically, but again, because of the nature of duress, it's almost impossible to bloody make a prenuptial agreement that's actually legally binding. James Sexton doesn't want to talk about this because obviously it would hurt his business. He needs people hitching it and then ditching it for him to be able to be profitable, right? And he said it himself in the video, I'll link it in the description, but when times are good, divorce is common. When times are bad, divorce is even more common. So he's in a win-win situation, and you know, I can see why he would tell you, okay, so just get a prenuptial agreement. That's going to stop like 50% of the women or whatever. I forget what percentage of prenuptial agreements get thrown out, right? But how many of them are contested? So the reality is, it's probably not the best idea. You can try with a prenuptial agreement. I recommend, if you're dead set on getting married, if you're going down that route, if you believe you found the one, if somehow you found one of the 1 in 5 women that's not going to divorce, rape you, that's not going to drag you through the ringers and make you a slave to the state, you can try and get your prenuptial agreement, see if it'll hold up in court. Again, it is a little bit dependent upon the judge. Like, if they want to screw you, they're going to, though. No matter what. Prenuptial or not, it's not going to save you. They get thrown out all the time. Sure, you can try and make it more difficult legally speaking, but at the end of the day, every single prenuptial agreement virtually is signed under duress, and you just make sure she has legal counsel that reviews it as well, if you're going to do that. Those are the 2 most common ways they get thrown out. Yeah, other than that, I like the James Sexton video. I thought he's quite the character. It's a good video. I'll link it in the description, but overall, I would say, if you're looking towards getting married, probably don't. I wouldn't get involved at all, period. Like, people are going to try and shame you. People are going to, use ad hominems to describe all sorts of horrible things about you. They're going to call you names or whatever, and just shake it off. It's pointless. Like, they're not really worth a dignified response. Like, there are so many people in this world, especially like in the comments these days, that are, just throwing out ad hominems like it's an actual argument. Like, here's a good litmus test for a lot of arguments on the internet, especially that the pro-marriage crowd presents. If your argument depends upon someone having sex, for instance, if you're dropping the I-cell on them, if you're calling them the incel, like, that has no impact on what their argument is. Like, having intercourse doesn't somehow make you more enlightened, or it doesn't somehow make you right in any circumstance. Neither is how attractive you are or how good your voice sounds. None of that really matters. What matters is what you have to say and the arguments being presented. So, a lot of people especially seem to get it in their head that they can just like sling out, just try and shame you into doing things. Like, that's not really realistic. That's not an argument. It never was. It doesn't really mean anything. And these people spewing this stuff probably are unable. They're delusional, right? They don't want to admit the truth, so they're going to shame you or try and insult you because they're e-hero or whatever, or the Daily Cringe crew or whatever says something's true about marriage, when realistically it's not. They're just pandering, and they're trying to, do things that are not in your best interest and grift off of you, right? Because that's what most of mainstream conservative thought is these days, is just a bunch of grifters. It's the same with the left, right? We've replaced the CNN news grifters with the YouTube grifters. It's still the same type of grift. These people still don't have your best interest at heart. Like, if you really want to start thinking about ways of moving forward that are positive in your life, math things out. Marriage, just mathematically, is not a good prospect for the average person, period. If you're, Rich Chaddington Chads, sure, you can maybe make it work. You have a much better shot than the average person. If you're Mr. Shapiro, yes, you stand a pretty good chance, like 75%. If you can pick and choose, have your Shabib organize, the college-educated conservative woman for you, whatever, in your religious community, it's a much better chance, but it's still not the best chance. Even Steven Crowder found that out. 1 out of 4 of these daily, odds are 2 or 5 of the Daily Wire crew is going to end up in a divorce. Sucks for them, right? But that's how it is. So, prenuptial agreements don't work. This marriage stuff doesn't work. Start doing things that are going to improve your life mathematically. Exercise to the point where you're satisfied with, not the point that looks aesthetically pleasing. Do your hobbies and progress in them in a way that makes you, enjoy them and makes your life better. You don't really need this sort of stuff in your life. Just start thinking about it. Start thinking about you instead of what, some e-celebrity is telling you what to do. That's all.